Hey everyone, welcome back. I've been really looking forward to this deep dive. Um, you sent in this sermon excerpt, Sweet Like Apple Pie. And wow, Reverend Farnsworth really got me thinking about original sin in a whole new way.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, he uses something as simple as apple pie to unpack this incredibly complex theological idea.
Right. And he starts off with that familiar story of Adam and Eve, the whole Garden of Eden thing.
Yeah, we've all heard it a million times.
Exactly. But then he hits us with how that very story has been, well, kind of misused throughout history
Mhm.
to justify, some pretty messed up stuff, frankly. And it makes you stop and think, whoa, hold on a minute.
It's a bold move and really important for any honest discussion about original sin. He's not shying away from that historical baggage at all.
Not at all. And then he brings in these three theological heavy hitters, Augustine, Pelagius, and Martin Luther. It's like suddenly we're at this philosophical debate, and the apple pie is right there in the middle of it all.
It's so clever. That's what makes the sermon so engaging. It's like he's breathing life into these different perspectives, turning it into a real conversation instead of just a lecture.
Totally. So first up, we've got Augustine, this like major figure in early Christianity. And he shows up with a pretty intense message. Like we're all born with this inherent flaw because of Adam and Eve, this
Yeah.
spiritual stain. It's like we're starting a race, but we're already a million miles behind.
And that is Augustine's concept of original sin in a nutshell. And just imagine, for centuries, this idea had a massive impact. Think about how people saw themselves, their relationship with God. It really affected everything.
Yeah, if you believe you're inherently flawed from the get-go, how does that shape your worldview? And Augustine believed that the way to deal with this original sin problem was through God's grace, right?
Yeah.
Especially through baptism.
Right. For Augustine, baptism was crucial. It's like this cleansing ritual, this reset button.
Hmm.
But he still believed that even with that, humans were still going to mess up, that because of Adam and Eve, we're still prone to sinning, no matter what.
Okay, so then comes Pelagius, basically saying, hold up, Augustine, I've got a problem with all of this.
Yeah.
Because Pelagius was all about free will.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely. Big time.
He believed we're born, kind of morally neutral,
Yeah.
and that it's our choices, not some pre-programmed sinfulness that makes us who we are.
Right. Exactly. For Pelagius, we have this potential for good and evil within us, and life is about learning and making those choices, good or bad. He wasn't about blaming everything on Adam and Eve.
Which I have to say, after Augustine's whole "we're doomed from the start" thing is kind of
I
refreshing.
know, right?
But I'm guessing the church wasn't quite ready for Pelagius and his radical ideas.
Yeah, you could say that they basically labeled his views as heresy,
Wow.
which just shows you how powerful these theological debates were back then. To challenge the accepted narrative, not easy.
It's like way ahead of his time or something. Okay, so fast forward, what, like 1,000 years?
Hmm.
And here comes Martin Luther right in the thick of the Protestant Reformation.
Yeah.
Now, what's his take on this whole original sin thing?
Well, Luther's really interesting because he tries to find this sort of middle ground. He agrees with Augustine that, yeah, we're born with this inherent sinfulness. But Luther puts huge emphasis on Jesus' sacrifice. That's the answer. That's the way to overcome sin.
So it's like we're still carrying that dent from original sin, but Luther's saying, hey, we've got this incredible gift, this grace through Jesus that can fix it.
Exactly. For Luther, it all comes down to faith. Our faith in Jesus, in that sacrifice. That's what ultimately allows us to overcome our flawed nature, to rise above it.
Wow. So we've got Augustine with we're doomed, Pelagius with we're free, and Luther with we're flawed but redeemable. Three very different interpretations of original sin just from these three guys.
Right. And it makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And you know what I love about Reverend Farnsworth's approach? He doesn't just leave it there. He brings it back to the apple pie, and he makes us ask, what if we've been so focused on the sin part
Yeah.
that we're missing something crucial? Like maybe there's a whole other way to see this.
It's like we're so busy staring at the apple core, we've forgotten about, the sweetness of the whole pie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where he brings up Matthew Fox and this idea of original blessing.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of focusing on how messed up we are, it's about celebrating how we were created.
Yeah.
Inherently good, made in God's image.
Right. It's a complete mind shift. We're not dwelling on some ancient mistake. We're celebrating who we are at our core, how we were made.
It's like that line in Genesis, right? And God saw that it was very good.
Exactly.
Very good. That's powerful.
It really is. And it makes you think about God's love, right? This love that's not dependent on us always getting it right. It just is before any mistake, before any sin.
It makes me think about that part in the sermon where Farnsworth asks, if God knew humans were going to mess up, why even create more of us? It's a good question.
Right.
If it was all about avoiding sin, wouldn't that be, I don't know, kind of counterproductive?
And that gets to the whole idea of free will, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The sermon argues that God created us capable of both good and bad because, well, that's part of what makes us truly free.
Okay, so how does all of this, I don't know, change how we see the Garden of Eden? If we're looking at it through this lens of original blessing, does the story even, make sense?
It takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it? It becomes less about disobedience and punishment and more about, well, growth. It's about God walking with us, even through, the stumbles, the mistakes,
Yeah.
the oops moments.
It's like that part, where God provides clothes for Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
even after they messed up. Always gets to me.
Right?
It's like even in their shame, their fear, God still showed up for them.
It's grace, isn't it? That unwavering love and support, even when we feel like we don't deserve it. It's such a powerful reminder for us today, don't you think?
Totally. I mean, let's face it, we're all going to make mistakes, right? Every
Yeah.
single one of us. But this original blessing thing, it's like this breath of fresh air. It's a reminder that we're loved not just despite our imperfections, but with them.
And think about how much guilt and shame people have carried for centuries because of this original sin idea. What if we could let go of some of that?
Wow.
What if we could replace that weight with a sense of hope, possibility?
That is a powerful shift. There's this one image Farnsworth uses that really stayed with me. He talks about Adam and Eve, sewing those fig leaves together,
Yeah.
trying to cover up,
Oh, yeah.
It's such a relatable image, isn't it?
Totally. It's like that feeling of just wanting to disappear when you mess up. We've all been there.
Oh, for sure. But even when Adam and Eve were hiding, God didn't give up on them.
Right. Kept reaching out.
It makes you wonder, what if we treated ourselves and each other with that same kind of grace?
What if instead of hiding when we mess up, we could just approach those moments with a little curiosity, see them as chances to learn?
Yeah. Instead of beating ourselves up, it's like, okay, what can I learn from this? How do I move forward?
Exactly.
It's just a totally different way of looking at things.
Totally. Like that saying, right? We're all works in progress. It's okay to not have it all figured out. And maybe this original blessing idea, it helps us extend that grace to other people too.
That's huge.
Not just ourselves, but everyone around us.
It's a powerful message. This whole conversation is making me rethink everything. How I see myself, how I see other people, even how I see God.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, for me, that's the sign of a message that really sticks with you. It makes you think, makes you ask those big questions,
For sure. It's challenging in a good way. Wow, this deep dive has been amazing. Who knew a sermon about apple pie could be so, I don't know, thought-provoking?
Right. You just never know where you'll find inspiration, do you?
Guess not. Well, thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive into Sweet Like Apple Pie.